Welcome for joining for this presentation on high potency APIs and ADCs. And I hope to bring you on a journey through high potency. When we're looking at the market and the landscape that we're living in, it's changing a lot. We see much more complex, but also much more potent molecules being developed, probably as a result of the industry moving a lot into oncology, but there's even other territories where potency is needed. We see also smaller companies driving innovation. So, looking at marketing insights, about 80% of all the molecules is in the hands of rather small companies, rather than the very large pharmaceutical companies that we've seen in the past, changing the dynamics in the game. We see a shift to specialized and enhanced formulations. For those potent products, it's not so easy to formulate them to bring the product at the right availability in the human body. So you need to tweak your formulation. It's not simply press a tablet anymore. You need to do things in addition to make the product formulatable. And we see accelerated timelines, especially in oncology. Regulators have seen that there's a need for treating patients. They allow, in certain circumstances and under certain conditions, product to be brought into human beings for testing a lot earlier. And as a result, we see a lot of changes on the market demands. Especially for high potency, you need a little amount of product to dose in the first place, which is bringing challenges as well. Because if you're dosing on a very low level, how do you make sure that the variability is not very high? So looking at that whole high potency segment is growing. It's growing very strong, at least a 10% overall market growth, which is faster than what the overall API market is doing. So we do see the growth. We see that there is an increasing trend to outsource molecules, for the same reason that the compounds are potent. You have to protect the product from the people who are making it, and you have to protect the people from the product that they're making. Because you don't want to treat your employees, you need to be containing that. And because those products are more potent, volumes typically reduce. A typical range between 1 and 10 tons, instead of the products that we've seen in the market, over 100 tons for blood pressure reducers or for a simple aspirin. Meaning that phase-appropriate assets are needed. Depending on the clinical stage and dependent on the volumes needed, you need to select a different manufacturing asset. Looking at Lonza, we've designed or distributed the market in 3 phases. The discovery phase, or what we call design, where you guys are making the molecules, you have the super smart ideas, this molecule fits to that receptor and it will do its job. That's not yet where we are active in. But in the development, so taking that molecule and make the process robust, scalable and manufacturable at a very efficient cost of goods, we are really good at that. And then of course, manufacturing those compounds at very large scales, that's something which is our bread and butter. I'd like to call us the world champion. Sometimes people say, you can't really announce that because you have to have the proof points, and we don't have the, games of who is the world record in that. But looking at those phases and looking from top down, we have drug substances, drug product intermediates, and the drug product. We have manufacturing assets and design assets, so development services, that are capable of handling those compounds, very potent compounds. And we have dedicated potency labs, dedicated potency manufacturing suites for the API, but also for the final product. And if you need something in between, drug product intermediate, like a spray dried dispersion or micronized product, we have those as well under containment. And this slide, some of you may have seen it before. If you're doing that all in the hands of one very seasoned and experienced company like Lonza, you can shave off time, which is helping you if you come into the accelerated pathways. You can save time because you're missing the handover between the different players in each space. You don't need to hand over from a drug substance into the drug product intermediate or the drug product, or even the ADC. You can all do that in one player, shaving off a lot of time, which is reducing cost on your side. It's also reducing cost on our side, which is good. That's a win-win for both. And because you are faster on the market, it will give you also the benefit of having the revenues earlier and higher than your competition. So if we're looking at the drug substance capabilities first, I'm taking you on a journey to Visp. Visp by night looks beautiful. In the back we see the winter sport areas of Zermatt and Saas-Fee. Beautiful. I don't know if that works, not really. We have the line on the base of the mountains, which is essentially the road, separating the village of Visp on the top from the Lonza side on the bottom. And I'm showing that picture for two reasons. First, because it's a very nice picture. But looking at high potency compounds, you need to contain them. Not just when you manufacture them, but also after you have manufactured them. And especially looking at high potency products, their manufacturing process will generate high potency waste. So you need to deal with that, and we want to keep this a sustainable picture. So the only thing that leaves this side is the product that comes to you, and it's the people when they finish their working day and they go home. Waste is destroyed on site, whether it's gas, liquid or solid. We have a waste incineration on site, handling those compounds in a safe way, in a contained way, making also a vision zero possible for a site like this. No emissions, and there's programs on the EH&S side driving that throughout. If we're going a little bit more in detail, Visp houses our Center of Excellence for High Potency APIs. We have the technology, a very broad toolbox. We have all the possibilities to run complex chemistries. We have a couple of very nasty chemistries that we do, and we do those well. We have also the possibility to allow bioenzymes or biotechnology or back integrate into the starting materials. We also have the plant set up in a way that we run multi-purpose plants, typically, with clean in place, decontamination in place, and a very well-contained way of working, allowing the operators to handle those compounds that are nasty and toxic or very active in a safe and sustainable way as well. As I mentioned, the infrastructure, very important. Hazardous waste is burned on site. And that's not what a lot of people can talk about. There's always, yeah, but I need to transport then my waste over the road to a waste incineration plant. I don't want to think about what happens if that truck gets a flat tire and was speeding a little bit too much. On the resource side, we have been handling those type of compounds for over 20 years. We have a really good team that is having the culture in place that they respect the chemistry that they're doing. They're respecting the compounds. They're dangerous, yes, but they can be handled in a very good way, and following procedures and containment policies makes that possible. We also have in-house design and engineering capabilities, so we can build our own plants, we can build our own containments, and we're even building our own glove boxes in case anyone is having an interest there. A high experience level, and the most seasoned people have a track record for over 19 years in high potency, just to give an example. On the bottom line, regulatory approved by all the major authorities, of course FDA and EMA, Swissmedic for Switzerland, and then a lot of other authorities. Most important audits that are happening on the site are actually the audits that you are asking us to do. That's our customer audits, over 50 a year. That's just about one every week. And the picture in the middle is really important. We have supported more than 30% of all breakthrough therapies in the past 5 years. So when people are saying, yeah, Lonza, you're big and you're slow and you're not flexible, that number is telling you differently. We are very agile, we are very flexible, we can accommodate different needs for different programs, and we're more than happy to support you there as well. One of the key elements is to have phase-appropriate scales. We don't want to run tech transfer 1, and then an upscale, and then another upscale. We prefer to select phase-appropriate equipment because that is allowing us to move fast through the clinical development timeline. And literally from 1 liter scales on the left to 10,000 liter on the right, we have capacities and capabilities to produce your high potency product. If we're looking at the occupational exposure levels that are given here below, 100 nanograms at the larger scales, 1 nanogram and lower for the lower scales. And that's quite ambitious, but that is needed for a lot of the antibody drug conjugate payloads, so the toxin that are being connected to an antibody. So we do a lot of work there, and you see in gray 2 expansion projects that are running. One enabling 2 suites. I'll tell you a little bit more about those. At scales between 10 and 50 liter, still flexible. And 2 manufacturing trains at large volume, 2 times 4,000 that were announced as a collaboration with AstraZeneca recently. Looking at those high potency process development labs, to start small, we have 6 suites in place. But it's not only I have a lab and I need to make sure that the product is handled safely, but in order to do that you need a lot of measures. Pressure cascades, so that the product is in the fume hood, and even when it would like to jump out with the airflows and air pressures, it's being pushed back in. Nothing can escape with a design like this. And of course we have different capabilities here. We can support chromatography, different kind of filters, different kind of reaction conditions. And it looks roughly like this. What you can see here is high potency labs where we're working down to 1 nanogram. Yet the people don't wear any respirators because the design has been made in a way that product is ventilated and removed. So people can work here relatively safely. Of course, when they put their arms through the opening in that glass panel, the thing can move a little bit up and down, but it's always the same dimension. They don't need breathing parts. So in essence, design the containment in a way that people can work in a lab coat, safety goggles, that's it. Of course, when you do a lot of powder handling, it may become a bit different, because powder has the tendency to flow a little bit in the air. That's where we typically go into isolators like here. But also that guy, he's dressed up in a way that he can breathe normally. And there the lab coat is a little bit tighter to make it easier in case that something would potentially go wrong, which so far it never has, and the design and the policies are there to protect it. So I'm going to take you into a case study on this, where we have, for those high potency works, proposed the customer instead of a multi-purpose plant, a monosuite. His volumes appeared to be higher than he thought. The market was more promising. What a nice challenge, what a nice problem to have. We proposed him a dedicated line, which is making it much more cost efficient. And because it is a monosuite, it can be a lot smaller than a typical, let's say, 4,000 liter reactor. So we're actually implementing a relatively small asset in a mono suite to support him just in time with portions of his product when he needs it. Instead of at the end of the year saying, by the way, here's your annual demand for next year. Because that's a net working capital type of issue. We've created those suites to contain down to 1 nanogram. We've granted the customer also extra capacity from the existing labs, so we can support him while he's waiting for the approval out of those suites. And those volumes are going, and of course we had to fix this before FDA approves the product. And of course we have defined certain safety measures for both parties by shooting up the contract in a good way. With a real partnership, and if you're looking at that, now my pointer is not working. Yeah, thank you. If you're looking at this, inside of this gray building, we have taken two floors. One floor is this mono suite that we're building for him. The other floor is a multi-purpose suite for any other customer having products along those same exposure limits. And if you're looking at how to design that, this is actually high-level engineering, although it's cardboard and tape. Nothing really more than that. But it's thinking about what are you going to do, how is that manufacturing process going to look like, and where do I need to put what kind of equipment. So the cardboard in the middle is a model of equipment that they will use. These rings that you see on the picture will be the glove ports for that isolator. But you better make damn well sure ahead of time that those ports are in the right place. Because at the end, the operator needs to work with the gloves, of course, but he needs to be able to reach every control, he needs to reach every point, and even after the manufacturing has been done, he needs to be able to reach every little corner, because he needs to clean the equipment as well. So, a typical mock-up, and after the mock-up was tested and approved, it was put into manufacturing, so we made the steel copy of this one. If you're looking at the layout of the multi-purpose suite, we're essentially looking here at the design of a room within a room. So there's containment, there's airflows, there's pressure cascades to keep the product in the right place possible. If you're looking at where the chemical and manufacturing is actually done, it's relatively small. The two numbers 1 are really the primary reactor areas. We can put in any kind of equipment for those type of programs, typically glass. So after the program is done, if you think that you needed another campaign somewhere, we'll wrap it in plastic and we'll separate it. Otherwise, we throw the equipment away. Because with 1 nanogram of containment level, I would need to clean into the picogram area, and I need to prove that I've cleaned it. So I need analytics way beyond normal capabilities. Second area for purification, so we can put chromatography in place, we can put in all kind of other equipments in place. It's essentially a very big walk-in fume hood under the right containment. And then for number 3, we have the isolation equipments, lyophilization options as well. If you're thinking about projects, we're more than happy to talk about these suites, because they will be operational by the mid of 2020, but we can still accelerate. So if you're in a hurry, we can make it possible in a hurry as well. Different kind of options still possible, different equipments that we can put in. This is a very large chromatography unit. I don't know if that large is needed for your process, but more than happy to talk about that. So looking at this, we looked at the integrated containment level. So the glove box, the whole design, align everything from the start of the program with the unit operations that we need, execute the gap analysis, and make sure that all the risk items have been tackled. be able to respond fastly, both in realization of the facility, but also in supporting the customer, and give the right level of flexibility. And all of that will give security of supply guaranteed for this specific case. If we're looking at larger manufacturing scales, the focus is there usually on containment. You see all kinds of solutions, even on a show like this. Everybody is offering something. What are you going to use? And the key message here, we are looking at the solid charging at the beginning of a process. How do we contain that dosing? And typically, the picture is not completely clear probably, there's a separated room in which the operator can add reagents into the reactor. For sampling, we typically go with more flexible solutions, because sometimes the sampling is completely different. We have sample loops solutions as well. And for the product unloading, when the process is done, we usually have continuous liner solutions for larger amounts of products. But also here, we've looked at the cleaning. Special designs, the picture is showing you a bottom valve with special channel where I can literally push with high pressure a solvent to make sure that the bottom valve is completely clean before opening the equipment for final cleaning. Also here, containment strategy as an integrated part. We like to look at that very early when we look the first time at what is your process going to need, how can we help you on that. We will look at the cleaning procedure also from that point. We have proven standards on decontamination. They work, they're guaranteed, and all of that will guarantee a very efficient equipment startup. And especially equipment startup means we can do things faster, and if we do things faster, the cost is much more economical for yourselves. Now changing gears, moving into the antibody drug conjugates. Very interesting area where an antibody, a large molecule, is combined with those very toxic products, making an aggregate that hopefully, at least that's what the theory says and some of the practices as well, when injected into the human body, the antibody will bring the payload or the toxin to the cancer cells. It will internalize and it will stop the DNA replication. So those cells are going to die. All the other cells, hopefully not. So it's an oncology therapy, minimizing any side effects. In a picture, schematically taken from Wikipedia, you can take the picture from anywhere else. It shows how that aggregate is looking like. And when we're looking at the manufacturing process, that's actually a biologics process. Because I cannot bring any harsh chemicals in contact with an antibody because it would destroy the antibody. So typically, we take the bulk, we run a first dialysis to change the solvents, then we couple the toxin, and then we have the conjugation reaction taking place under mild conditions, because otherwise the antibody breaks down. And then we do chromatography, tangential flow type filtration for the final purification of the product, followed by the final formulation, which, if the process has been designed optimally, you're doing the filtration in the same buffer as the final formulation. Looking at that process, quite interestingly, we need an antibody. And Lonza can support those from different sites in the world. From mid of 2020, we can also support them in Visp. And we have already a good experience where at least 10 of the antibodies we produced for customers were taken, brought to Visp, conjugated in Visp in our bioconjugation facility. We have run over 60 projects since 2007 already. And we've done over 600 cGMP batches. Some of them is very large scale. New is a drug product formulation, where we have services in Basel, and we're working on realizing formulation facilities for larger clinical amounts or commercial demands, also in Visp. Then looking at the payload synthesis, we've used over 12 different platforms. There's a lot of development happening. And if you're looking at this slide, we are realizing the antibody production in VISP in a huge program called IBEX. And if you want to know more about IBEX, I would invite you to our booth to talk to our specialists on that, where they literally have the complete life cycle management as well. For the payload synthesis, I've shown you the expansion that we're doing. We're going live with that in 2 different phases. The first go live is in March. And on the bioconjugation, does that work? Oh, there it was. We're also expanding that. We have approved, or seen one of our customers be approved his product, so we're now quite happily supporting the 3rd commercial ADC. And we're looking forward to supporting this actually from one site. If you remember one of the earlier slides, having that in an integrated place saves you time. Having all of that in one site will save you even more. That brings a lot of value. And that's summarized here also. One company, call it one-stop shop, but working under one set of terms and conditions for the whole program. That's something that we would love to do for you. We have one lead project manager coordinating the different programs in there. And we also have all of the work on analytics, etc., aligned. From discovery, or after you have discovered your idea, we gladly take that all the way into commercialization. And if we're looking at those labs, they don't look that different. On the top left, you see the picture on the ADC labs. That's just like high potency chemicals. Of course, we're doing something else in there. Clinical manufacturing, that's a lot of disposable or single-use equipment, plastic tubes, plastic bags to run that process, disposable chromatography units, depending on how you see your program and how you see that develop. And then when we go commercial, we typically have these large stainless steel tanks. So far that works best, in different sizes and suited for different platforms. As I was referring to the occupational exposure levels and the cleaning limits we need to reach, those are dedicated per toxin platform. Because we can't prove that the toxin is really 100% gone. We can prove that the antibody is gone, so that's easy, but that's stainless steel. And of course, the whole quality labs, quality control, quality assurance organization is dedicated to these ADCs. They know what those products are, how that typically behaves, and how to release and test those in an optimal way. In a summary, our bioconjugation capabilities, literally from 1 milliliters all the way to 600 liters. So whether you're in very early phase, mid phase, or very late phase, we can support you on that. And we're expanding there as well. We're expanding process development into 4-liter scale that is much more suited to support preclinical and first clinical phases. And at the same time, in commercial, we're adding manufacturing suite for commercial use. In a summary, we operate 24/7. We have 7 late-stage ADCs in our pipeline at the moment that we can disclose, or at least the number I can disclose. We have 3 out of the 5 commercial ADCs that we are producing in the market. With a little bit of research, you can find out which products they are. And more than 80 batches that we produce every year. Also inspected by all the required agencies. And if you're looking at the picture, the bar that is going up here is essentially the separation between the payload manufacturing and the conjugation. So we literally have 2 buildings very close together to minimize transportation of those highly potent compounds. Whoops. That brings me to the conclusion. In that whole market, in that whole space, we have to move at the right pace. You as a customer have a certain planning for your clinical trials. We need to adapt to that planning. If you can go faster or need to go faster or are allowed to go faster, super. We will adapt. We will shape the project teams slightly differently to align those accelerations over the different disciplines, but we can do that. We need to secure your flexible supply in a way that when you need more, we can deliver more. Thinking about that early helps in actually realizing that. And I hope that my case study and an investment together with the customer is showing you that new ways of collaboration are the key to the future. We're more than happy to talk about that in more detail. Come and visit us at our booth. I'll be there. And thank you very much for your attention.